Hello, everyone. Welcome to Barca News. It is June 10th, 2026, and Barcelona are expected to ask for 500 million euros more for the Spotify Camp Nou construction. Also, concerns about Lamine Yamal's injury. And finally, Barcelona set to not sign Marcus Rashford. We have a lot to discuss, so let's begin. Hello, everyone. Welcome to the channel. My name is Bo. Let's begin with some little bit of upsetting news, but nonetheless, news we need to cover because it's reported that John Laporta will be asking for between 400 to 500 million euros more for the Spotify Camp Nou. Now, we touched on this, I think it was the day before yesterday, but it seems that Barcelona are running out of money for the Spotify Camp Nou renovation, or the Spy Barca project renovation, I should say. If you don't know what I'm talking about, Barcelona requested a 1.45 billion euro loan from Goldman Sachs and other banks in order to begin the Spy Barca project, which includes the renovation of the Spotify Camp Nou, the renovation of the Palau Blaugrana, and the renovation of the surrounding area or the campus where the stadium is currently located. And it seems that 1.45 billion euros has been spent. So it's expected that Jean Laporta will request from the Socis a more credit in order to go and ask these banks for more money. Now, as you know, Jean Laporta did win re-election back in March. However, under the Barcelona rules, he will not become president or will not take his post as president until July. For now, we have the interim president, who is Rafa Yuste, who used to be Jean Laporta's vice president and is expected to go back to being vice president once Jean Laporta is president again. And Jean Laporta is expected to again become a president in July, during which he will hold an extraordinary meeting where he will announce his new board of directors. And during that meeting, it's expected that Jean Laporta will ask for more credit or permission from the Socis to request more money or to borrow more money from banks in order to complete the Spy Barca project. Now, initially, we didn't know how much Jean Laporta could be requesting, but today, Catalonia Radio stating that Laporta is set to request between 400 to 500 million euros more. Now, of course, we will know for sure if that figure is true once July rolls around and once Jean Laporta actually makes this request official. But we're talking about making this a 2 billion euro renovation project, which of course is incredibly high. Now, as you know, the Camp Nou, the first two rings are done. We still need to finalize the third ring, which includes, of course, the seats and the VIP boxes. And we also need to finalize the roof. But that's not all, because the Palau Blaugrana has not even been touched yet. So it's completely undone. And the campus or the surrounding area is also not done. So it looks like Barcelona will be requesting another 500 million euros to complete the third ring of the Camp Nou, plus the roof, to begin and complete the Palau Blaugrana, and to begin and complete the surrounding area. So 2 billion euros, a lot of money. This is, of course, aside from the 1.4 billion euros that Barcelona already owe from operation cost. So that would bring Barcelona's debt to 3.5 billion euros. A lot of money borrowed, ladies and gentlemen. But of course, the good news is the Camp Nou is expected to generate 400 million euros per season. So I think that's good news. And of course, if the team continues to do well, that means increased revenue and ticket sales, sponsorships, TV rights, awards from winning the championship themselves, et cetera, et cetera. So hopefully all that will mean that Barcelona will be able to face their huge mounting debt. Now, on to the next bit of news, because we do have more concerns, and this one concerns Lamine Yamal, because Barcelona are worried about their star player, because Luis de la Fuente stating that Lamine Yamal could play some minutes against Cape Verde, which is the first match that Spain is set to face off against the World Cup, which of course will begin starting tomorrow. Now, why is this concerning? Because Lamine Yamal was injured on April 22nd versus Celta. You know, when he took that penalty kick, scored the goal and immediately went to the ground, touching his leg. The expected recovery time was 8 weeks. And well, the match against Cape Verde will be on June 15th. So if you do the math from April 22nd until June 15th, that's 53 days. That's less than the initial expected recovery time. And Luis de la Fuente is already talking about having Lamine Yamal playing some minutes, which again would mean that Lamine Yamal will be playing ahead of his recovery schedule. And this is, of course, generating a lot of concern amongst the Barcelona camp, especially since Lamine Yamal hasn't even trained with the group. In fact, Spain just played a friendly match against Peru right before the World Cup, their final friendly match. Lamine Yamal didn't train with the group, didn't warm up with the group. He was only doing exercises in the gym. And Luis de la Fuente already talking about playing him against Cape Verde, which of course would be insanity because not only would Lamine Yamal not be ready, but also why are you risking the health of one of your most important players for a match against Cape Verde? I mean, we're not talking about Spain playing against, I don't know, France or Germany or Brazil. We're talking about Cape Verde. I mean, do you really need Lamine Yamal to beat Cape Verde? I don't think so. But anyways, we'll see what Luis de la Fuente does. Hopefully, he will not play Lamine Yamal. Hopefully, he'll understand that Lamine needs to continue resting, recovering, because, when you force an injury, well, instead of 8 weeks, it could become 20 weeks, right? So it's better to play safe, better have Lamine recover, rest, and that way he can be important in the important phases, like the knockout stages, as opposed to a freaking match against Cape Verde. Like, seriously, you telling me Spain cannot beat Cape Verde without Lamine Yamal? Of course they can. But anyways, speaking of injuries, let's move on to the next bit of news. And this is good news because Barcelona are already working on improving the contract of Marc Bernal. Now, of course, Marc Bernal missed all of 2024, 2025 season due to injury after he blew his ACL. He spent the first half of last season kind of like getting some minutes here and there, and then he spent the second half of the season being a starter right next to Pedri, where we're all seeing his huge potential, where I have no doubt that Marc Bernal will be a staple of Barcelona's midfield for many years to come. As I've said many times before, every time I watch this guy play, he reminds me of Busquets, the way he holds the ball, the way he dictates the tempo, the way he holds the midfield. I mean, it's absolutely amazing to watch him. And he's only 18 or 19 years old, which means he's only going to keep getting better and better and better. And as opposed to Busquets, who's one of our greatest midfielders in history, of course, Bernal, he has, more physical guy, and of course, someone who can score goals as well. So who knows, maybe one day he could even be better than Busquets. Now, of course, those are big words. We cannot get ahead of ourselves, but it's pretty apparent that Bernal is the future of Barcelona's midfield. Barcelona understand that, and they've already started working on increasing his salary. They're working on a new contract for Bernal that would see him get a better salary, which will reflect, of course, his contribution to the first squad, which I think is absolutely great because this is how we should be as a club. We should reward good performances as opposed to just giving raises for the hell of it, right? Or for the sake of it. So really good news on that front. And of course, that will also motivate Marc Bernal to continue growing, getting better and better and better because he knows that, well, good effort is rewarded here at FC Barcelona. Now, let's end today's video with the big bombshell news today because, ladies and gentlemen, Barcelona will not be signing Marcus Rashford. Now, as you know, Marcus Rashford spent last season on loan with Barcelona. He has an option to buy worth 30 million euros. That option to buy is set to expire on Monday, June 15th. And while Barcelona have communicated to both Manchester United and to the player that they will not be activating that option to buy, which means Barcelona will not be signing Marcus Rashford on a permanent transfer. Now, why are Barcelona not doing that? Well, they told the player that they won't be doing it because, of course, they have Rafinha and they just signed Anthony Gordon, so they have two left wingers. It wouldn't make sense to spend 30 million euros on a third left wingers. I mean, what are we, Real Madrid, who signed 20 left wingers and don't reinforce any other position? Of course not. Here we have, some semblance of common sense as opposed to Real penalties. Now, after Barcelona communicated to Rashford that they will not be signing him, the player removed any reference to Barcelona from his social media, which of course further confirms this news, but also shows that probably the player feels a little bit hurt. But it's not personal. Rashford, that's just football, how football works. Barcelona just signed Anthony Gordon for 80 mil. Why would we need to sign a third left winger? It just doesn't add up. Now, despite Barcelona communicating to Man U and to Rashford that they will not be signing him, they're not fully closing the door on the possibility of signing Rashford. They're saying that Barcelona would still consider his signing, but only if three conditions are met. First of all, that Julian Alvarez is signed, right? Because he is the main focus right now. Barcelona want to finalize that signing. Once that signing is finalized, Barcelona would look at signing other positions like maybe a center back, maybe a fullback, maybe Rashford. Second condition that Barcelona would need in order to consider the signing of Rashford is for Rashford to reduce his salary. Now, you might say, Mo, Rashford already offered to reduce his salary. Yes, Rashford had offered to reduce his salary by 40%. But even at a 40% reduction, Rashford would have still been one of the best paid players on the Barcelona squad. That just goes to show how high his salary is. Barcelona, of course, said, hey, can you reduce it more? Rashford said no. And then, of course, the third condition that Barcelona would need is for Manchester United to lower their asking price. So if these three things are met, Barcelona finalizes the signing of Julian. Rashford agrees to reduce his salary even further, and Man U reduce their asking price, then Barcelona would consider the signing of Rashford, which in other words, it's not going to happen. I don't see these three conditions being met. So it looks like Barcelona will not be signing Rashford, which, as I've said before, it just doesn't make sense. Why would we need a third left winger? Not to mention a left winger that was highly inconsistent this season that he spent on loan to Barcelona. And of course, Anthony Gordon is just a better fit for what Hansi Flick asking for, right? Hansi Flick needs attackers who consistently press, who offer you that extra without the ball. Rashford is just not that player. We consistently saw him throughout the season not pressing. When he lose the ball, he would just walk, maybe jog, but never ever press or try to get the ball back once he lost it. And of course, that was good maybe 10 years ago where wingers could just stay up and waiting for the ball to attack. But in this kind of football, in this modern day football, you need wingers who can press. You need wingers who are active on and off the ball. And Rashford was just not that guy where Anthony Gordon is. Anyways, that is all the news for this video. We'll be going live in a few more moments because there is more news to bring you. Don't forget to hit the like button, subscribe to the channel, drop a comment, and as always, peace, cars.